Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to make some delicious blueberry scones with a lemon glaze, which is a great way to put all of those fresh blueberries to good use. They are light and flaky and bursting with blueberries, and the best part about this recipe is you can make these all a day ahead. Have them cut and ready to go sitting in your fridge, and then when your guests arrive, you just pop them in the oven. How easy is that? Let me show you how to make them. Now when it comes to scones, there are really two ways to go. You can mix up your dough in a food processor, or you can mix up the dough by hand. And I have tried both techniques, and I am here to say that I really think mixing your dough by hand is the way to go, just like Grandma did. I find you get a better texture, and here's why. So what makes a scone light and flaky are the big chunks of butter. So the butter, when it hits the oven, will start to melt, and that will leave an air pocket. And that air pocket is what creates that nice flaky texture. And I found when you mix the scone dough up in a food processor, sometimes you can take it too far and you end up with more of like a coarse meal and you don't have those little chunks of butter. And that will create a really sort of heavy, dense scone. So if you want to be able to control those chunks of butter, mixing it by hand is the way to go. So we are first going to begin by adding 2 cups of all-purpose flour in a large mixing bowl. Then you're also going to add 1/3 cup of white sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and then you also want to add a tablespoon of fresh lemon zest, and 3/4 teaspoon of salt. So you can whisk that all together just until combined, and now we're gonna prep our butter. So these scones take 10 tablespoons of butter, and it's really important to start with very cold butter. So what I like to do is cut up the butter into little cubes, put it in a bowl, and then pop it in my freezer for about 10 minutes. So go ahead and add your butter to your flour mixture, and then just go in there with your hands and start to sort of smush the butter together with the flour. It is a little bit tedious, but I'm telling you, it is well worth the effort. And you'll know that it's at a good place when the butter is like the size of a pea. And this really helps that butter is cold, because if it's not and it's room temperature, you'll start to smush it together and you'll have like a little paste on your hand and you won't retain those little crumbles. And that is what is going to create our flaky scone. And then in a measuring cup, you want to pour out 1/2 cup of heavy cream, and then crack in 1 egg and 3/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And you can whisk that all together. Then in your flour mixture, you want to create a well in the center, and you're going to pour this cream mixture into the center of the well. And this is really an important technique anytime you're making scones, because it will combine that wet ingredient with the dry ingredient in a way that gets all of those dry ingredients incorporated. And at this stage, you can also add your blueberries. Go ahead and just put them right in the well. So you can mix this dough up with a fork, or my Aunt Mallory recently sent me this little gadget, which I have to share with you because it's so fabulous for scone dough. It's called a Danish whisk. I know it looks like some kind of antique cooking implement, but it works so well for mixing up scone dough, because what it does is it allows you to mix the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients and not smush those blueberries. It's one of my new favorite things. So I will put a link in the description of where you can find it online. And then once your dough starts to come together, you can remove the whisk, and then with floured hands, just kind of clump it together to make sure everything is adhering and that you have a nice little dough ball. Then you can transfer that out onto a floured surface, and then you want to be careful at this stage. You don't want to overwork your dough or you'll end up with a tough scone. Then you can take a chef knife and just dip it in flour and then roughly kind of form a square with it. I think the chef knife really helps with that. Then you can cut your square in half and then into quarters and cut those down the diagonal. And then you'll have a little triangle. And then you want to transfer these to a cookie sheet lined with parchment paper. Then before we put our egg wash on these, I like to pop them in the freezer for about 8 to 10 minutes. And I do this just so that these scones can become really chilled and hard. And that will alleviate the butter leaching out when they hit the oven. Because sometimes that can happen if you've put scone dough that is too warm, that's like room temperature, in a hot oven. The butter will start to sort of melt out before the actual interior starts to bake. And then to create our egg wash, you can add 1 egg and 2 tablespoons of milk and whisk that together. And then brush each of the scones with this mixture. And this also helps with any cracks that might be forming. It's good to just kind of brush it on the scone and try to adhere it back together, just so that they don't crack and split more once you start to bake. Then we're going to place these in a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for just 20 to 25 minutes, just until your scones are nice and golden brown and you start to see those blueberries burst. Then you're going to pull them out and let them cool slightly, and you could serve them just like this. They would be absolutely delicious with a little butter and jam. Or if you want to kick it up a notch, you could make a lemon glaze, which is also really delicious and simple to do. So in a bowl, you're going to add 3/4 cup of powdered sugar, And to that, you're gonna add 2 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice. And you can whisk that up until it's nice and smooth. And then you can take a fork and dip it into the glaze and drizzle it all over the scones right there on your cookie sheet. I do like to wait until these scones, though, are just warm and not hot to do this. Otherwise, the heat from the scone will melt the glaze and it'll absorb into the scone and you'll end up kind of with an invisible glaze, which isn't as good as a slightly visible glaze. Now, if you would like another fantastic blueberry recipe, then you must try my blueberry crumb cake. It is to die for. And you can click the annotation here, and I'll see you over there.